under the sweltering skies of the Pacific in September 1944. As the humid winds swept across the vast stretches above Borneo, Major Richard Ira Bong guided his P-38 Lightning into a gradual downward arc, the twin Allison engines humming with the fierce harmony of 3,000 combined horsepower. Behind the armored glass of his cockpit, he scanned the open expanse below, watching the shifting sunlight streak across the tops of clouds as he searched for shapes rising from beneath. Far below, Japanese fighters clawed desperately upward toward the slow, lumbering silhouettes of American B-24 Liberators, their pilots unaware that a man whose quiet demeanor hid unparalleled lethality was already sliding into position high above them. What those ascending enemy pilots could never have guessed was that the seemingly ordinary young man tracking them through the calibrated circle of his gun sight, once a farm kid from the tiny Wisconsin town of Poplar, had already sent dozens of enemy aircraft falling in flames. By the time the war would grind to its exhausted end, he would tally 40 confirmed victories, securing his place as the highest-scoring American fighter pilot in history, a benchmark that has stood untouched for 80 years and almost certainly will never again be surpassed. Yet his journey to becoming America's most formidable aviator began not with an innate thirst for combat, nor with a natural warrior's instinct, but in a far more unexpected place: the dry, sun-baked training fields of California, where disciplinary problems, unauthorized aerobatics, and youthful impulsiveness nearly ended his career before it had taken shape. At Hamilton Field, the freshly minted 2nd Lieutenant Richard Bong, new out of Luke Field in Arizona, still unfamiliar with the full temperament of the P-38, made a series of reckless decisions, executing low-altitude antics and aerial stunts above populated areas near San Francisco, directly violating Army Air Force's rules. His escapades earned the swift displeasure of General George Kenney, who wasted little time in reprimanding him. But Kenney, a commander with sharp insight and a keen eye for rare talent, also saw something beneath the disobedience: remarkable spatial awareness, uncanny reflexes, and an intuitive feel for aircraft behavior that hinted at extraordinary potential. Rather than clip his wings permanently, Kenney tightened supervision, enlarged his responsibilities, and watched closely to see whether discipline could transform raw ability into operational excellence. What he recognized was that Bong possessed innate qualities that distinguished the extraordinary pilots from the merely competent: instinctive control inputs, precise depth judgment, a cool mind under extreme stress, and the mental quickness to calculate deflection angles without conscious thought. These were skills that couldn't be taught easily, but could be developed with the correct structure. And so Kenney allowed the young flyer to continue. By September 1942, Bong found himself attached to the 9th Fighter Squadron of the 49th Fighter Group, headed toward New Guinea with the 5th Air Force. He entered the war with limited real experience, while the Japanese aviators he would soon face had already been refined by years of brutal conflict stretching back to the late 1930s. They were veterans of China, the Philippines, and countless engagements across the Pacific, battle-hardened professionals whose skill and experience on paper far outweighed that of the Americans rushing into the theater. It was under these perilous conditions that Bong flew his first combat missions in December 1942 above Buna, where P-38s climbed skyward to intercept Japanese bombers guarded by agile Mitsubishi A-6M0 fighters. As Bong watched enemy formations emerge from cloud breaks, he understood instantly that this combat would not resemble the control training fields of the United States. The P-38 Lightning itself, with its unusual twin-boom design, counter-rotating propellers, high-speed capabilities, tricycle landing gear, and fearsome nose-mounted armament of 450 caliber machine guns and a twinning cannon, was unlike anything the Japanese had encountered. At high altitudes and high speeds, the Lightning was a predator unmatched, capable of climbing past 40,000 feet and exceeding 400 miles per hour. Impressive parameters that allowed it to outpace and outclimb most Japanese aircraft. But in tight circles and low-speed turns, the Zero reigned supreme. Japanese pilots, experts at low-speed dogfighting, could easily outmaneuver a P-38 pilot foolish enough to try matching the Zero's turn radius. Many American aviators lost their lives early in the war by attempting to fight on the Zero's terms. Bong learned quickly not to make that mistake. His first victories came from mastering what the P-38 did best: attacking with superior altitude, striking with blistering speed, and unleashing breathtakingly concentrated firepower from his centralized guns. His shots didn't scatter from wing-mounted positions as they did on other fighters. Instead, the Lightning's forward-facing arsenal produced a narrow, devastating stream of destruction. When an enemy fighter entered this lethal convergence, it often disintegrated within seconds. Bong's combat write-ups were modest, clinical accounts that mention conditions and outcomes without bravado. But what they quietly revealed was that he had already internalized a fundamental principle. Do not fight the Zero at its strength. Fight on your own terms. Bong refined these tactics with astonishing speed. The P-38, engineered by Lockheed's brilliant Clarence Kelly Johnson, was a masterpiece of innovation, yet also dangerous for those who failed to respect its quirks. The aircraft suffered from compressibility in high-speed dives. When descending too fast, airflow could form shock waves around the wings, locking the controls and trapping the pilot unless he executed recovery procedures perfectly. Many men died learning this firsthand. But Bong absorbed every lesson quickly, developing an instinct for how far he could push the plane. By early 1943, he accumulated several more victories and a growing reputation for marksmanship. While other pilots emptied long bursts of ammunition hoping to land hits, Bong fired concise, measured bursts only when he sensed the perfect moment. The film from his gun cameras revealed a clear pattern: meticulous stalking, disciplined patience, precise positioning, then a short, deadly firing pass before pulling away. His fellow ace, Major Thomas Lynch, noted that Bong seemed to wait for the exact second where every advantage aligned before committing to an attack. His efficiency became legendary. Fewer bullets spent, fewer risks taken, more enemy aircraft destroyed. The foundation of his dominance lay in extraordinary deflection shooting. Most pilots struggled to judge how to fire not at where an enemy was, but where it would be by the time bullets reached it. Bong made these calculations almost subconsciously, adjusting his controls smoothly as though the aircraft were an extension of his own reflexes. By mid-1943, engagements over New Guinea demonstrated his growing sophistication. During one attack near Leh, he used altitude advantage not to pounce immediately, but to observe, to wait, to strike only when bomber formations presented vulnerabilities. Diving at high speed, he obliterated targets with surgical precision, then climbed again to re-engage from a superior position. Japanese fighters, despite their tighter turning abilities, struggled to counter these tactics. They could not force him into close-quarters turning duels because he simply refused to enter them. He dictated the fight every time. As his tally grew, reaching 21 victories by November 1943, General Kenny honored him with the Distinguished Service Cross and sent him home for a bond tour. The American public embraced him instantly, admiring the mild-mannered farm boy whose unassuming appearance contradicted the fearsome reputation he had built in the skies. But Bong longed for combat, and by March 1944 he returned to New Guinea. this time flying the enhanced P-38J variant with improved engines and boosted control surfaces that made the aircraft far more responsive in high-speed maneuvers. Meanwhile, Japan's air power had been eroded by years of attrition, leaving many inexperienced replacements struggling to match seasoned American pilots like Bong. Throughout 1944, during escort missions above Hollandia and beyond, he continued refining his combat doctrine. Retain altitude, strike with speed, disengage before opponents could react, never fall into prolonged, turning contests, and always exploit the concentrated firepower of the P-38's nose guns. His willingness to press head-on attacks, a terrifying maneuver requiring absolute steadiness, gave him further advantage, as most enemy pilots flinched or broke away first, even when his aircraft sustained damage, such as during the fierce fighting above Balikpapan in October 1944. Bong demonstrated remarkable composure, feathering a smoking engine, putting out fires, and continuing to fight on a single power plant until the engagement was won before returning to base in a battered but airworthy aircraft. By the end of that year, his confirmed tally rose to an unprecedented 40. At last, under direct orders from General Douglas MacArthur, Kenny permanently grounded him, insisting that the nation could not afford to lose its most celebrated ace whose skills and knowledge were now of immense training value. Bong's last mission in December 1944 passed without combat. His wartime role had ended, but his influence endured. His gun camera films became teaching tools. His written combat analyses shaped fighter doctrine. His techniques for deflection shooting and energy management became foundational principles for new pilots across the Pacific. After the war, Bong transitioned to testing aircraft in California. The jet age was dawning, and he joined as a test pilot for the new Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star. On August 6, 1945, during an acceptance flight over Burbank, a catastrophic engine failure at low altitude left him with no chance of recovery. His parachute deployment came too late, and the aircraft crashed, killing America's greatest ace at only 24 years old. Tragically, his death received only modest coverage, overshadowed by the headline that the Enola Gay had dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima that same day. Yet 8 decades later, Bong's record remains untouched and likely eternal. The nature of modern aerial warfare, with long-range missiles and radar-guided engagements, ensures no pilot will ever again fight the kind of close-ranges duels that defined his era. His legacy survives in the halls of the Richard I. Bong Veterans Historical Center in Wisconsin, where his Medal of Honor, flight logs detailing 200 missions, and a lovingly restored P-38 bearing the name Marge stand as solemn reminders of his achievements. General Kenny, who had once reprimanded him for reckless flying, later wrote that Bong was the most efficient fighter pilot he ever observed, someone who relied not on rash aggression, but on flawless technique, patience, and perfect timing. The Pacific battlefields where Bong carved his legend are quiet now. The wrecks long surrendered to vines and soil, but his record and reputation endure. 40 victories, countless lives saved, and an indomitable legacy of precision and discipline in aerial combat. He proved, through every engagement, that mastery, not recklessness, wins battles. His story remains the story of America's greatest aviator, a quiet hero whose unwavering focus, unmatched technique, and lethal accuracy secured a place in history that no pilot has surpassed and likely never will.